Hello everyone, Doug Burson. Been a while since we've talked like this, and sorry about that. It's been a crazy summer for me. I'm sure it was for a lot of you as well. I ended up breaking my shoulder. I ended up getting COVID, no major symptoms, so nothing to worry about. But it's been a wild ride. I know it has been for a lot of you as well. But tonight, I want to talk about the PPP Loan Forgiveness Program. We want to get it off our books. I know a lot of you do. I've been getting a lot of calls on it. Is it time? Can you help? Should we do it? And really, it's not quite that simple. Can I help? Of course we can. And can we help you with the application? We would be glad to. But before we go into that, there's a few things that I think we need to think about before you rush into this. First of all, did you fulfill all the requirements? If not, if you've got any time left on your covered period, of course, we want to make sure that gets done. It's also important to know that we have 10 months from the end of your covered period before there's any payments that come due on this. So we don't have to rush in. Now, I do know that many of you, this has been a huge stressor. You just want this off your books and you're losing sleep at night. And so I understand that, and that's important for you, obviously, for just your personal well-being. But before we run into this, I want you to understand some things. First of all, is your bank even taking applications? Now, a lot of banks are starting to, but one of the things you need to think about is why would your bank not be accepting applications? Most of us are aware that the banks want these off the books as quick as they can because they're not making any money on these. We think the banks are making money. These are not loans that the banks want on their books. They want these off as quick as they can. So why would they not be accepting applications? Well, the reason is that there are quite a few leaders in Congress that would like to simplify this for all of us, and they'd like to make it so that anything under 150,000 is greatly simplified or almost automatic to the point that they maybe even become similar to a grant. We don't really know, but that's some of what they're talking about. And if you're a bank and you've got a bunch of loans, and even if that only takes you 2 to 5 hours per loan, the man hours for the big banks that will be wasted if they find out 30 days from now that it's automatically forgiven is astronomical, on top of the fact that they're not making money on these to start with. So that's why. But that's their problem, not yours. So the other problem with this is it's going to cost you money, or at least time if you do it yourself. But if you have us help you, there are going to be costs involved with the time it takes to put together the loan application and the time it takes to put together all the documentation. So one of the misconceptions is that they've simplified some of the applications, and that's true. The problem is you still got to put together all the documentation so that you can prepare the application accurately, and you have to maintain that documentation. I believe it's for 6 years. So we have to make sure we do all the work so that if we get audited down the road, we can show that we did what we were supposed to do. So, is it the right time for you to apply? It's really going to be on a case by case, and it's going to depend. But there's some things you probably haven't even thought about yet, and I want to talk about that for a second, and that are the tax advantages. Is there an advantage to applying now and trying to get the forgiveness done this year versus waiting till next year and applying and getting the forgiveness next year? Because it's possible, we don't know for sure yet, but it's possible that if we wait till next year, we won't have to recognize the decrease in deductions until next year's tax return. And if you've done okay this year, it may be to your advantage to wait till next year for the deduction. Are we going to be allowed to do that? They haven't actually said, but generally the income is recognized in the year the forgiveness happens, not the year the debt was incurred. So it's possible that that could be what's going to happen. It's also, could this be affecting your self-employment tax if you're a Schedule C? There's a lot of questions right now that just still have not been answered. And for a lot of you, it may make sense to wait it may make sense to just go ahead and decide now we're going to file an extension on our tax return, wait till next summer, see what happens, because what if next year all this stuff continues to happen and the economy really does slow down and your business didn't make as much money next year? It might make sense to recognize the income or the decrease in deductions next year versus this year, if that's possible. Right now, we don't know for sure. But on that concept, maybe some of you aren't aware of this and you really, really, really want to hear this. While receiving the PPP money is not taxable income, the deductions right now are not deductible expenses. And a lot of people have a hard time getting their brain around that. But if you did not have to pay money for the income, or if you don't have to recognize the income, then you cannot deduct the expenses. Now, there are several in Congress that would like to change that too and allow us to have the deductions as well. So far, it hasn't happened, and so for the time being, we have to assume that when we apply for forgiveness, the money you receive for PPP will come off of your deductions in some form or fashion, which by default makes your taxable income go up. And I don't know how many people haven't really thought this through, but this could be a big, big deal for many of you. And it's possible if you're having a record year, and some of you are, we may want to kick this down the road and see what happens. It's also possible that they're going to forgive it, but what happens if it waits till next spring and then they pass it and we already filed our tax return? Are we going to have to amend our tax return? Are we going to have to push it to the next year and not have the choice because we already filed? A lot of questions here. We just don't know. And so while, I'm more than willing to do your loan application now, and for a lot of you, it's going to be the right choice. But I really have to stress, we need to think through this and make sure you guys understand the implications as best we can, because we don't even know the implications because we don't have the rules yet. It's like always, they just throw us out there and we got to figure it out. So another problem on this concept, and I know I'm negative Nancy right now, but I just got to tell you guys what we really know, is even if you fill out the application tomorrow, run it over to your bank, give them all the documentation that they're going to need, and it really doesn't matter which application, we still got to have all the documentation. We get all the documentation, we build the package, we get it over there tomorrow. Just so you know, I can't do one for you by tomorrow, but let's pretend I could. If I could, the bank has 60 days from the time you give them the application to review it, decide you qualify, and give it to SBA. Already we have a problem. Now, let's just pretend your bank's as good as I thought I said I wasn't, but they got it done and they submitted it to SBA tomorrow as well. SBA has 90 days to approve the application. And I'm going to tell you right now, from what I've been seeing, the SBA has been really, really slow on a lot of things. So I would not guarantee that it's going to get done by the end of the year. Doesn't mean we can't try. Doesn't mean we can't push for that. But you just need to be aware that even if we do all this, it may be next year before you get the approval to have the loan forgiven. And because we don't know all the rules, we may still be able to deduct it in this year, even if it's next year, or next year. We just don't know all the answers. All we can do is the best we can. So for those of you who have some more complicated things going on, it may be the best thing we can do is just to file an extension, sit this out for a while, and see what Congress and the Treasury do. Now, if we do it, it's also important to understand that those of you who got the EIDL advance, the $1,000 per employee up to $10,000, that will not be forgiven from your PPP loan. It will have to be paid back. If you did not have a PPP and you got the advance, then you're okay. But if you got the PPP, the EIDL portion will be reduced from your forgiveness amount. And I want you to understand that part. So it's high level. A lot more is going to be happening. The election should have results over the next few days. It appears that the Senate's going to retain control. If that's the case, some of this will be easier because at least then we'll have a pretty safe bet that the tax rates next year will be the same as this year. If that slides, that could change things too. And this year's taxes versus next year's tax rates could have an implication on when we want to recognize the income based on just that alone. So I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but I just feel like I got to share what we know so far and be as honest as I can. Now, I've said all that. If after hearing all that, you're saying, I don't care, get that thing off my books, I can't sleep, I'm stressed out about it, I'm worried they're going to mess with me, no problem. If you will just send me an email to frontdesk@pagetkc.com, frontdesk@pagetkc.com. Let me know you want us to go ahead with it. I'll get you on the list. I'll send you over an engagement letter and we'll get started. What's it going to cost? I don't know. It's going to depend on your bank. So we're expecting most of the people we deal with will be 2 to 4 hours at $150 an hour. We're doing a 2-hour minimum is how we're going to handle this thing. For most of the banks that I've talked to, they understand it. It's not going to be a pain, but I've heard of horror stories where some banks have required front and back of every stinking payroll check and front and back of every, I mean, it could turn into a lot depending on the bank. But as long as the bank is reasonable and we've got all our ducks in a row, it shouldn't be too bad. So most people are going to be between 2. I don't think hardly anybody is going to go up above 10 hours, but it could. Not making any promises there other than we will be as efficient as we possibly can. And when we do that, we will then have to discuss the implication on the taxes too, so we can talk about that too one-on-one because everybody's going to be different there. So hopefully that answers a lot of questions. Hopefully maybe it brings the stress level down knowing you have 10 months before you even have to start to make a payment, and we have that time to go ahead and get plenty of time to get the application in, and maybe they will go ahead and forgive it and make our lives simpler. But once we start on the process, we're going to have to do it, and then if they forgive it, we will have already put the time in. So that's a risk that you just have to weigh out, and hope that helps a lot. We'll continue to bring out more. I plan on doing some videos on individual taxes in the next few weeks to try to give some updates on that so you guys know what's going on there. And wow, tax season's almost on us. Talk to you guys later.